Grusch says we care about aliens, but they don't care about us. Let's talk about that. Welcome back, guys. Another episode of The Briefing. Welcome to all the new subscribers. And if you are new here, please consider subscribing. Around here, we pull out all the hidden threads, testimony, history, and evidence most people never even hear about. Novelist and journalist Walter Kirn recently appeared on the Megyn Kelly show, and he had some fascinating things to say about NHI, aliens, non-human intelligence, whatever label you prefer.
Dave Grusch is a friend of mine, and he's a source, and I've known him for 3 years. I was texting him in the green room. I said, what can I tell Megan's audience? He said, the problem with the aliens is that we care a lot about them, but they don't care a lot about us.
Yeah, I want to break this down a bit because one of the interesting parts is that David Grusch supposedly relayed this information directly to him, considering how legally careful Grusch has been in every public statement. That struck me as odd. Why wouldn't he have said this earlier?
This soundbite. Watch.
I don't like to characterize necessarily where they came from. They're definitely some kind of non-human sentience, but it is true, believe it or not, we've recovered the vehicles, and we actually have physical proof, and I was actually partially cleared into some of those activities. It was beyond oral testimony provided to me. I actually had partial access to the data and actually read the intelligence reports resulting from those programs.
Like with your own eyes,
Correct.
You saw it.
Yes.
After thinking about it, though, it started to make a little more sense. So let's walk through it for a minute. When you look at the idea of higher dimensions, which are part of a legitimate scientific theory, we know that something is happening beyond our familiar three-dimensional world. And one of the long-standing ideas about NHI is that they may be higher dimensional beings, and Hal Puthoff has spoken about this before, especially regarding reports from airmen who describe craft that look small on the outside, but were somehow far larger on the inside. That's exactly the kind of effect you'd expect when interacting with a higher dimension. We're three-dimensional creatures. If the theories about the fourth and fifth dimensions are even partially correct, a being operating at the fifth dimension or beyond would seem almost godlike to us, able to be in multiple places at once, move through time, see the future, and much more. And when you think about that, Grusch's statement starts to click. Why would they care about us?
In other words, we're still exploring this universe. The gorilla was only discovered in the middle of the 19th century. It was a mythical being that they finally discovered in the jungle. They found bodies and so on. I'm convinced, and I hate to tell you this, that Dave is telling the truth, and that against great pressure and great mockery, he's trying to describe our actual world to us. It's a world in which we have not made all the discoveries yet.
I actually agree with Walter Kirn here. Humanity is still exploring, still trying to understand reality, and there are so many parallels between these encounters in our ancient myths and legends. At some point, we may realize those gods and spirits from old stories were NHI the whole time, and we just lack the vocabulary to describe them. I also found it fascinating that Kirn mentioned the idea that they're like gardeners. They check in on the garden from time to time. That's almost exactly what 𝐬𝐫 told Carl Higdon in his famous abduction case. And it makes sense. We're 3D beings. How often do we check in on ants, insects, or a 2D drawing? Only occasionally? Kirn also brought up something else, the claim that Dick Cheney was at the top of the UFO program. He says Grusch told him this privately, and that rumor circulated about a year ago and popped up again after Cheney's passing.
Since the statement made by George Bush last July, there's been a vicious rumor circulating in the UFO community that you've been read into the UFO program. So my question to you is, in any of your government jobs, have you ever been briefed on the subject of UFOs? And if you have, when was it and what were you told?
Well, if I had been briefed on that, I'm sure it was probably classified and I couldn't talk about it.
And it stunned me. It was significant because, first of all, he basically stated it would probably be classified and stated I wouldn't be talking about it, which means they're going to continue to keep it secret. And he basically acknowledged that, yes, he's in the loop, and yes, there is something to this. It's secret, and it's important.
Honestly, I can believe it. Cheney was involved in some extremely dark and controversial policies: the Iraq War based on faulty intelligence, support for torture and enhanced interrogations, expanding executive powers, secrecy, surveillance. So the idea that he could keep deep black budget secrets doesn't feel far fetched. And then there's the whole Trump will disclose rumor floating around on X.
Another interview subject reveals that President Trump almost revealed this base fact in his first administration. And to the extent that Steve Mnuchin, then Secretary of Treasury, asked the head of the U.S. government's UAP task force for a briefing and told him he was asking for that briefing so that he could assess what the economic impact would be if the president chose to go to the microphone and tell the world we're not alone. So it's been contemplated in the past by past presidents when they find out the base facts. They've contemplated telling the public that, and then they've been deterred from doing so. I think now this movie sets the stage for a sitting president to comfortably step to the microphone and tell the world the truth, that we are not the only intelligent life in the universe, and that the U.S. intends to lead the way in this new chapter.
Dan Farrar talked about this on JRE. The idea that disclosure might accelerate after the documentary comes out. And personally, I do think Trump could be the one to do it. But also, I don't think disclosure is anywhere near the top of his priority list at the moment. As for the Project Bluebeam theories, I'm not convinced. At least not yet. There's too much weird organic activity happening, whistleblowers coming forward, stories shifting, people getting discredited. If there were a coordinated Bluebeam rollout, the people in power, intelligence agencies, whoever, would have every reason to dump all the information at once, not let things trickle out. So what do you think of Walter Kern and these revelations? And what are your thoughts on what Grusch said? Drop your opinion in the comments below. And that's all I've got for you today. Keep asking the questions, stay curious, and keep the conversation alive. And I'll see you on the next briefing.